You guys ask a lot of questions, okay? And one of the questions that I get quite often, because a lot of you are considering buying second properties for investment purposes, is do I use Airbnb or a realtor? Short answer, I've used both. And in this episode, I'm going to tell you what works for me, what didn't work for me, and just a bit about my experience so that you can decide what will work best for you. I'm Kelly Johnley, and this is Bajan Renovation. So I know you want to know what's going on at the house. Well, it's a quiet day today, and well, for two reasons. You know, we had a lot of bad weather. I'm happy to say that there was no damage to the property, or at least what happened was a minor inconvenience, and I will just tell you what it is. But there was no damage here. But I actually do have a meeting with the contractor tomorrow because it is now time for the next drawdown of funds. I have the funds already, but the meeting I'm going to have with them is really just a recap of what was done so far and what the next round of funds is going to be used for. So until they rightfully get their money, we are on pause, but this pause will have picked back up by the time you see the next show. Now, as opposed to what was quote unquote damaged, I wouldn't go so far as to call it a damage. As you know, we had set up the structure for the temporary electricity, and I'd gone down to Light and Power, gotten my letter to request the electrical supply. Well, lo and behold, I was so shocked when Light and Power, who were busy dealing with all the barrels infrastructure mess, had time to come down here and connect my electricity. I received an email from them letting me know that the reason they haven't done it is that the structure which we erected is no longer stable. So I can only assume that that is a result of the bad weather, but kudos to Light and Power that even after all they had to deal with last week, had time to still come down by my place to check and let me know what was going on. So as soon as my contractor reinforces the structure, we will have electricity. Okay guys, so for context, I've been a landlord now for roughly 6 years. And while I do not have everybody's experience under my belt, I have used Airbnb and real estate agents to rent the properties. And there's some distinct reasons why I prefer one over the other. I'm not telling you which one will work best for you, but I'll share my experience and you can decide, because I know a lot of you are considering investing in properties for rental purposes, and it's just good to know how you're going to go about doing that once you have your property secured. I'm going to start with the pros, my pros for using Airbnb. And just for transparency, I have not used Airbnb in the last 4 years, okay? But my experience was enough to say it was not for me. But here are the good things. With Airbnb, you can make more money than if you were renting on a fixed lease. So if you are looking to maximize revenue from a property, short-term rentals, a quick turnaround of short-term rentals will probably get you there. I never had any issue receiving my money from Airbnb. It showed up exactly when they said it was supposed to show up on the day that it was supposed to. I never had a bad experience with a tenant, or a guest as they like to call them. No one mashed up my place, no one stole my things. I do not have any horror stories to tell you. So I guess the question is, if you're getting your money and your place ain't getting mashed up, why not stick with it? Here's why. Now, something to consider when you list with Airbnb, you need to be very clear on the type of guest you want to host. Here's why. The reputation of Barbados and Airbnb is going to precede you, right? People come to Barbados for many reasons, but a large reason is for holidays. Someone coming to stay in your rental who's coming on a vacation is going to have expectations, may have expectations for you as a host, i.e., are you going to be a tour guide? Are you going to be there to help them maximize their visitor experience? That is tourism work, okay? If you just want a quick turn property where you have somebody coming in, let's say for work or something like that, you need to say up front that that is what your place is best suited for. When you're listing your property, do not oversell it in terms of location. When people come to Barbados on holiday and they want to stay near beaches and sites and stuff like that, keep in mind that some of these people may not be driving. Do not oversell a property, because you're going to end up with a guest whose expectations you can't match. And I think you would know how you would feel if you were in a similar situation. So be very clear about who you want to have. Another thing you have to consider before you go through an Airbnb for short-term rentals is how much time you as the host want to dedicate to this business. And you need to keep in mind that if you're renting your place as a quick turn, this is a business. This is not a side job. The place has to be clean. It has to be restocked. Things need to be sometimes refurbished over a period of time. It is a job. You may also have to receive your guests. Do you physically have the time to do that? I could tell you that I personally did not. And I'm also what you will call an absentee landlord. I am not hosting you in the country when you come to Barbados. So I found that for me, it always made more sense to go with long-term rentals. Anyone who was coming for at least a month was my ideal tenant. The next question was, do I use a realtor? The answer is yes. Now, I know many people don't want to use realtors because they say, why are you paying this body this money to rent out this place if I could rent it out myself? And you're correct. You could probably save some money, but I could tell you a realtor will save you a lot of problems. All right. Let me tell you a bit about the services I know that I benefit from using a realtor, and you could decide if that's best for you. One, there's a level of familiarity that exists in Barbados, particularly if you are dealing with someone you know. And in Barbados, even if we don't know the person, we know somebody that knows the person. Using a realtor cuts out that level of familiarity and keeps this as what it needs to be, a business transaction. There are questions that you as a landlord may not be comfortable asking that your realtor will ask for you. They will be able to get references for you. They're going to get copies of IDs. They can request job letters. They can do background checks. All of these are things that you are going to want to know before you hand over your property to someone. Unless you are in the habit of asking those probing questions, let a realtor do that for you. Another thing that a realtor will come with is a lease, right? Realtors in Barbados are registered with, I believe, the Barbados Estates and Valuers Association. So they understand what they are doing, and they're going to come with a fairly comprehensive lease that not just protects your interest, but it also protects the tenant. It's not going to only cover things like payment. It is going to cover things like when and how payments are to be made, how the property is to be used or not used, who is responsible for things like minor repairs, what is the course of action in the case that something is damaged on the property. There are so many things I can tell you probably have not thought about over a long-term tenancy that a realtor has. And having that lease, which is your contract, in place is important. Another thing is it cuts out time wasting. If you put a property on the market for rent, chances are you'll have a number of inquiries. You may not have the time or even want to give up your time in this way in showing people the property, right? You may not want people to know it's yours up front. So having a realtor be the person who takes the calls, that shows the property, etc., saves you a lot of time. But personally, what I really appreciate about using one is that it keeps the transaction as what it needs to be up front. A business transaction where terms are clear, where they can gather information, ask questions, use their judgment, because the truth is a lot of times people feel comfortable renting to certain types of people because these people got certain types of jobs. That does not necessarily make them a good tenant, okay? Lean into the expertise of a real estate agent. I found that I have never been wrong in terms of letting them go along with the month's rent. It has saved me a lot of agony. I have never had an idiot tenant yet. A high maintenance one, but I've never had a bad experience with a tenant, and I have had several. So I shared a bit about what I know, but I would say if you're thinking about becoming a landlord, whether through a realtor or Airbnb, talk to a few other people and find out what their experience is to find out what is really going to be best for you. Because your reason for renting may be very different from theirs. If you're just renting to save some money, if you're renting in order to buy another property, if you're renting to make a profit, all of these things are going to influence your decision. But I hope you found what I shared helpful and you can keep the questions coming. I'm Kelly Johnley, and this is Bajan Renovation.